Hi, I'm Seamless, and the other day I was looking at a comment on one of the 75K tutorials where I had elected to use Serum. I started using Serum because I wanted to try and use a plugin that more people had access to that could also do sort of the stuff that I was doing, and like I'm more comfortable obviously with Harmor and Citrus, but Harmor and Citrus are not available on Mac, at least not stably. And Serum is available to everything, so kind of better idea to sort of utilize that to reach more people, which is an interesting idea because when I'm not as good at using Serum, so this means that the 75Ks that you involved using it weren't just really on point as it would have been if I were using something I was more comfortable with. However, it was still using more or less the same concepts because all of the 75Ks tend to be a bit simpler than I let on with some of the more Harmor or Citrus specific things I like to do. And in the comments of one of these videos, somebody actually said for me to stop using Serum, but then proceeded to suggest that I use Massive. And his reasoning for this, and I'm not necessarily hating on this guy because he did present this in a way that on its face seemed pretty reasonable, was that more people use Massive, so you get more views and more people will be able to do it, and so like, why not reach a larger audience? And it's more or less the same reasoning that I gave when I decided to use Serum, so why not use Massive? And the thing about Massive is it has to do with this term industry standard, which you probably hear a lot or even say to people when you justify your usage of certain things like Massive. Or another example would be like Pro Tools. If you're going to go to a recording studio somewhere, I dare you to find a professional recording studio that's not me that doesn't have a copy of Pro Tools in there, or at least doesn't advertise they have a copy of Pro Tools. And it's even called Pro Tools, which I just want to point out, the first time I ever heard the term Pro Tools, I didn't know that was the name of the software. I thought they were literally referring to saying, oh, they have professional tools in their studio. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. They're professionals. Yeah, that's cool. No, it's a software called Pro Tools. How just egotistical is that? But point being about this idea of the industry standard, I just hate it. I hate it so much because after a certain point, something will reach critical mass in its ubiquity. Like something like Massive, for example. Whenever anyone talks about like, oh, I want to produce, certain kinds of bass music. Well, what do I need? Okay, well, you need Nexus, you need Massive, you need FMA, you need Battery, or Vengeance, that kind of thing. There's if you ask anybody an opinion on what they need to produce certain things, those are usually the more common items that pop up. Also Ableton Live, that kind of thing. And there's nothing really wrong with these choices. They're not like in a lot of perfectly absolute truth and totally truthful. Is that a word? They're not the best tools, is what I'm saying. And that's what happens when things start to get sort of critical mass with the industry standard concept. It is an industry standard because people call it an industry standard, and they think that they need to have that in order to do what they want to do because it's the industry standard, is what the professional uses. The professionals use. So obviously, why not? Why not use that kind of thing? That whole idea. And the whole problem with this, especially in my eyes, is that they are not the best tools for the job. They're just the most famous tools for the job, which does not necessarily mean that they are the best. And I can already feel people just being like, well, the XYZ artist uses it, and obviously it's not good enough. And you're not wrong. It is good enough. But you have to ask yourself, is it the best tool for the job? And a lot of the people who who popularized Massive and FMA and that kind of thing, either probably didn't know stuff like Harmor or Citrus existed, or Harmor didn't exist while they were doing it, or Serum especially didn't exist while they were doing it. Serum is very new. And especially in terms of Massive, almost everything Massive does, Serum can do, and it can do better. And it can do all kinds of stuff that Massive can't do. There are some things Massive can do that Serum can't. But they're particularly specific usage cases, or there's ways around it. But I mean, oftentimes the things that people are using Massive for can be done absolutely better with Serum. And same deal with FM8. Citrus is better than FM8 in far more ways than Serum is better than Massive. There's one thing FM8 can do that Serum can't, and that's it. And then there's like 1,000 things that Citrus can do that FM8 can't. That kind of thing. Hell, I accidentally said Serum, but Serum can honestly do a lot of the things that FM8 can do. It has FM built in. It's insane how good that plugin is. And however, because it's so new, not a lot of people are using it. And a lot of newer producers, when they come in, are still going to flock towards massive, and they're still going to do that, and that's going to be what they're doing because it's an industry standard. And it just, I hate it. I hate that term so much because at some point it stops being about what that thing can do, and it starts being about, well, everyone has it, so everyone has it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's just stupid. And it doesn't. It's not a logical argument as to why someone should have something like that. And like, I have massive, and it was for that reason. Like, when I was newer producer, people would be like, "How'd you make this sound?" "Oh, you just plug in massive." Like, all right, I'll go get massive. And like, there were other plugins and other ideas people keep flopping around. And like, the whole point, the entire point of all of my tutorials that I've ever done, except for like the very specific ones about like hardware resampling or whatever, because I didn't really know what I was doing back then, has always been about the idea that if you know enough about basic synthesis concepts, that you can do anything with anything. And like the example of the YouTube comment there with the particular 75K tutorial was a Zomboy sound that I didn't really get. But the way that I got it was absolutely the way you would get that sound. I just didn't get the articulations correct. I didn't get like the exact positions of the high passes and the filters and distortion and the way that it would net you the sound that it got. But it is absolutely the same class of sound. And if you know that, and you figure out what I did, which was to filter a square wave and distort it, you could do that with anything. You see, oh, okay, well, if I think about it in terms of just that, of filters, waveforms, distortion, as opposed to this oscillator in massive, this filter position in massive, and this like distortion in massive, then you can translate that to whatever the hell you want. And a lot of the times you'll discover that some of these seemingly complicated sounds are actually just super basic shit that you can do with anything. And that's sort of the point I always try to get out of my tutorials, is the idea that like the industry standard is fine and dandy and whatever, but it's not the end all be all. And chances are, if it's especially because technology, like, you know, evolves and gets better and new things come around, that kind of thing. Like Pro Tools at one point in time actually Pro Tools for a while was like an extremely specific and like uniquely powerful system, mostly because it relied on hardware acceleration. Pro Tools and studios with Pro Tools would have specific computers that were like Pro Tools computers, and it would do things and allow them to do things with the software that you could not do with anything else. And a lot of that was because at the time, computer processing sucked. Like, it was actually still pretty good because this wasn't that long ago, but it like regular consumer level processing wasn't up to par enough to do Pro Tools and do Pro Tools like things and other things that were not Pro Tools until somewhat recently. I mean, you might notice that while you probably still can do the kind of hardware acceleration with Pro Tools, there's also like the UAD plugins and that kind of thing. Like, they're not as aggressively marketed anymore. You don't really hear about that anymore because regular computers could just do that, and it's not a big deal anymore. And so, but unless you're like intimately familiar with that kind of stuff, you're still going to think that Pro Tools is still the end all be all, because for a while it was. And time moved on, but people are still latched on this idea of all the industry standard. So like at one point in time, Massive probably was one of the most sophisticated plugins available ever for any reason at all. But time moved on, and now there's new shit. But people are still just thinking like, okay, well, this thing was done with this thing and was used with Massive, and it stagnates. It stagnates innovation when it comes to sound design, and that hurts my soul. Hurts it a lot. Yeah, I mean, a lot of you who know me know that it is extremely momentous for me to be using a third-party plugin at all. And it's not just because I love FL so much and I only want to use FL things, that's whatever. I use the plugins I use because I objectively think that they're the best at what they do. And that's why it was such a big deal that I added Serum to my arsenal, because it is actually somewhat rare for a non-FL plugin to be the best at something. And on it for real, if you have questions, if you want to talk to me about how you think maybe that there might be other things that are better or certain things, fucking tell me. I will converse with you, and I'll make my case. I'll make your case. And if you can like prove to me that some things are better, they can do things better or differently, I'll go look that up. I'll go deal with it. It'll happen. Just such as it did with Zero when it was presented to me by Steve Duda as being something that did stuff that nothing else could do, and that's what makes a good tool. That kind of capability. Not the fact that everyone uses it. Yeah. I think I really need to start hammering home. Like, I started out this channel doing only advanced stuff, and that was because I wasn't good at presenting information. I wasn't good at teaching things. Yeah, I didn't know, like, it's one thing to know how to do something, and it's another thing to know enough about how to do something that you could teach other people how to do it, like, coherently. And that wasn't me in the beginning of this channel. So I only taught things that I just figured out, which was the more advanced stuff, the base processing and whatever. And then as time moved on, I started doing more and more basic things, which I just didn't really want to do because I assumed that there were reputable, good sources for that kind of stuff outside of my channel, and boy, was I apparently wrong about that. But I started to do more basic things. I started with the FL Basics tutorials, and even that was a little too advanced. So I started doing Production Basics tutorials, and even that was a little too advanced. And now I'm starting to do the How to Synth series, which is still too advanced for some people, even though, like, it's like the bare bottom minimum of, like, normal quote-unquote processing, because it's not base stuff. And I've been considering starting a series of tutorials that's like the most unbelievably basic stuff possible, because I really feel like this industry standard stuff and people's marriage with popular plugins, because they're popular, not because they're the best at what they do, has to do with the fact that they do not have a basic understanding of just what makes up a plugin. I mean, they might know what subtractive synthesis is. They might know what additive synthesis is and FM synthesis, what wavetable synthesis is, but they don't know things about like how, like, what a filter, what that matters is, and like what an LFO is, and what even an oscillator is, and that kind of thing, which you need to know if you want to have like freedom of sound design. And I actually just finished making a whole rant earlier about like not caring about that. If you don't care about that, it's fine. If you don't care about that, that's totally fine. But like, if you're coming to my tutorials to learn how to make a sound and to actually learn how to do sound design, that's the kind of stuff you need to know before you even look at anything I've done. And I realized recently that I don't have that kind of information. So I guess coming soon to a tutorial near you, ultra basic terminology. That's what that is. Anyway, that's what industry standards. I hate them, and sometimes they're deserved. I mean, like I said, back in the day, Massive. I think Massive came out in 2003. Like, Massive was on the level of like the most sophisticated kind of piece of sound design software you could possibly find, and it's a testament to its power that entire genres have morphed as recently as like 2010. At a sound design that people have not done with it before that it could last that long. People are still finding new shit to do with it. That's also because Massive is a relatively solid, I mean, it is a very solid plugin, so that means that basic concepts like subtractive synthesis can still be applied to it. And if you find anything new to do with subtractive synthesis or FM, because there is some FM involved, then you could do new cool stuff. And that's you're going to be an infinite possibilities pretty much forever. And that's always been the case, even with just saw waves. People are finding new and cool things to do with saw waves. And even real basic stuff, because I mean, like the snail's sound, that like the sort of texture that he has on his stuff is basically just a saw wave and a vocoder. That's all that it is. And then he does more, you know, he builds off of that to do more crazy cool stuff, and it's totally awesome. And it's real ingenuity and power to make something like new and cool like that, but also be so simple and elegant in its design. And so that's a testament to Massive's power, but it can't, like, it hasn't changed. There hasn't been an update in Massive in forever. In the last update, all that did was change what the file type was to prevent piracy. Like that, yeah, I had a point. I forgot what that point was. Point being, you know, research as to why things are industry standards. And if people cannot, like, articulate like their value other than to say that like their idols use them, it's actually a logical fallacy. Like, if you're an internet person at all, you've probably been schooled in debates with someone as being like, no true Scotsman, or appeal to authority, and like that's actually that one right there, appeal to authority, where the idea that something is better, X is better than Y because authority figure uses it, and that's why it's better. That's not a valid argument. It's not. Like, you know, it's like if Skrillex came around and revealed that all that FMA stuff I did, nope, it was totally all Massive, everything was Massive, then it doesn't mean Massive is better than everything else. It just means that he did a really good job using Massive to do what he did. But if that's the case, that probably means he could have done it better if he used Serum at the time, if it existed, you know, in 2011. So, like, that's what appeal to authority is, and that's why it's not valid, so you know. But, like, investigate why things are industry standards, and try and put that in a context with modern things. It's fine if you don't know. It's whatever. Like, it's a pretty safe bet. You know, it's why things like industry standards exist. is because if you don't know, then the simplest answer is, okay, well, let's go find a professional and let's find out what they use. And then you do. I've done that. I still do that. That's totally valid. But like, you need to kind of keep questioning that, because just because they are professional and just because they are successful artists and they have made music that people like and they do things that you like does not mean that what they did was the best way to do that, which might be a bit of a difficult concept to wrap your mind around, but it's absolutely the truth. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, and I mean that, if you want to talk to me about these things, do it. I'll talk to you. It'll be great. Comments happen. Don't forget to make comments and like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.